All right, so thank you all for joining. So the training that we wanted to do tonight is really how can you rebuild or engage your warm market. So when we talk about a warm market, it's people that we are interacting with, people that you might know well or might be new friends, but how do you really engage people authentically, which then later may become business prospects or product prospects. So what I wanted to share with you today, I'm actually going to share a piece of training that I just listened to recently with Bob Heilig. And if you haven't watched any of Bob's stuff, he's fantastic. I highly recommend you check him out. But I really like these strategies that he gave for kind of rebuilding and growing your warm market. He talked about, are you kind of feeling stressed out because you feel like you've run out of people to talk to, or you feel like you're maybe kind of wasting time because you aren't making progress in your biz, or questioning, are you able to lead others to success? So all of those fears that may go through our mind. But he's going to give us 5 strategies that I'm going to share to really kind of help you produce results. Nothing in this business is going to be a quick fix. It's not meant to be, but with time and patience and consistency, these are things that we're going to all see impact our business, and I'm going to be trying these along with all of you, so I'm really excited. So one of the things that he really talks about in the strategies that we're going to go over is, are you generally a giver or a taker in your relationships? And if, really the secret behind growing and engaging your network is to be a giver. The more you give, the more you get. I mean, that's true outside of this. It's true in life. The more you put out there, the more positive energy you put out to the universe, the more positive energy you get in return. And part of that is, you can't just give and expect something in return. But people that give authentically will start to see a big return in their business. So for takers, it's kind of a win or lose proposition every time, which causes stress. So if every time you have a conversation with somebody, you're thinking, am I going to get a sale out of this? Well, you're going to feel like you're losing a lot, because guess what? A lot of people are not going to try our products, or they're not going to try them maybe the first time you have the conversation. So if you can take yourself out of that taker mindset and really focus on that giver, that abundance mindset, it's going to make it feel more comfortable when you do get a no, when somebody does ignore you, when you're struggling to find those yeses. It's just about continuing to move forward. He talked about, what does it look like to have a taker mentality? 70% of your posts are just selling, and all you're ever trying to do is push product on people. You've got a taker mentality. You never want to pitch someone in your first message about your business. That's, again, like a taker mentality. If I've never talked to you, I'm someone you just found on Facebook, and the first thing you do is like, hey, do you want to buy my product? I mean, that's like really off-putting. If somebody says no, they never hear from you again. That's a taker mentality. I've had people tell me no that have come back 3 years later saying, now I need help. And they want to, because I kept having conversations with them and I just loved them as who they were ready to re-engage with me. Those are just the kind of things that you want to shift that mentality if you have it. Some of us, some of you may not, none of us may have that. But he just really talks about really making sure you've got that. And then he talks about never giving up or abandoning your warm market. So I've been doing this business for over 3 years. Hillary's been doing it for almost 2. There's people that have been doing it for 5. Some of you have been doing it for a month. I can guarantee that no matter where we are in this business, we have not gone through our warm market. Like, I guarantee it. Unless you have literally talked to every person in your Facebook feed that you've ever met in your life, and you've talked to every single one of those people about Plexus and gotten a yes or a no or a maybe, you have not tapped into your entire warm market. That's the beauty of it. And your warm market, if you're doing it right, is always going to be growing. So you are always going to be adding new people into that funnel. It means you will never run out of your warm market. Now, here's what happens. Victor Antonio, who's a money consultant, gave a great stat at one of our conventions. He said, when you start to sell something or you start to share something, 10% of the people in your network are probably going to jump pretty quickly. These are people that are either like really close family or friends, or people that are impulse shoppers and just like to try the newest thing. But those are the people that you kind of easily get. They get you to silver a lot of times. And then those people kind of either try it or you've had a conversation with them and it feels like, well, now I've tapped out my warm market. Well, it's not the case. You've just tapped out the people that are super easy to get in the beginning. 20% of your market is probably never ever going to try your product. I mean, these products could cure cancer and they wouldn't try them for whatever reason. But then there's that 70% that we want to continue to focus and engage on. And so that's what we're going to kind of talk about a little bit today. So here's the 5 strategies that he gave us to in his training to really engage this market and grow it. And these are kind of about, not about going and procuring the contacts, and we can talk about that later, but it's really about what do you do to engage the people that are in your network today. So the first step that he gave is what he called value-driven follow-ups. Value-driven follow-ups. And this is about reaching out to somebody with something that will add value to them, but may not add value to you. So an example of that might be, let's say I'm checking in on someone who is a prospect and, you know, I haven't talked to them in a while. Maybe it's like, oh, how have you been doing? How are your kids? And maybe they share with me, if you're doing active listening, people will actually tell you a lot about what's going on in their lives. They like to share, they like to have someone to talk to. They may say, oh, you know, everything's been good with the kids, but my mom has been really ill and I've been her caregiver and it's just really been draining me. And so we talk about that. You know, there might be later that week, I may want to do a follow-up again and say, hey, I read this article on taking care of yourself as the caregiver. Or I found this great business podcast, if it's a person that comes to you with a business problem on your team, or whatever the case may be. It's about thinking of others and providing something of value to them. And the reason that it's important is if you engage and put effort into them, they are going to be way more likely to engage with you and be willing to listen to what you have to say. Because at some point down the road, you're going to go to them and say, hey, I think these products could be really helpful for you. We had that conversation a few months ago about, you know, you were struggling with self-care, and supplements can be a great way to ensure that you're getting that, you know, what your body needs, especially if you're not always able to eat well because you're always on the run or whatever the case may be. You know, it's not enough to just post in this business. You've got to reach out and work with your contacts and your relationships, but you've got to put money in the bank, so to speak, before you try to withdraw money from the bank. So really, these value-driven follow-ups will start to do that along the way. The second thing that he said that's going to really engage and grow your warm market, and I know not everybody loves these, but it's doing live videos. Live videos are so key to your success. And they're not just live videos on Plexus products, but there should be some of those in there. But it's about, you know, learning out loud. Maybe you learned like a great tip today, a mom hack, or, you know, you learned some interesting health information. Whatever the case may be, you should strive to do 1 to 3 live videos per week. It does a couple things. In Facebook and Instagram, it actually raises your profile in the algorithm to show up in more people's feeds. So Facebook rewards, and they on Instagram too, they reward different activity that you take in different ways. And live videos are the highest rewards you can do. It also creates points of commonality. So Hillary did a great example today, which was she's struggling because one of her boys keeps putting holes in the knees of his pants. And if you ever have had a boy, you know that you're like, literally, what are they doing with their pants that they always have holes in the knees? Like, what are you doing at school? What are you doing at recess? But it was great. It created a point of commonality. It wasn't a long video. It wasn't complicated. It just was like, I can relate to that kind of thing. So the more you do that, the more you're going to be able to build those relationships through your content. Again, people then feel like they're hearing from you regularly, not just like, oh, hey, I'm trying to reach a sales goal, so I reached out to 30 people today. So that was the second one, and that was live video marketing. The third strategy that Bob talked about is leveraging your existing team. And so what he was talking about with this was help your team leverage their networks. So maybe, we do this a lot when somebody's new, right? So they don't know really how to sell the products yet, or even the details about the products. They either just know they want to share them, or they felt good on them and they've got some people they want to talk to. We jump in that three-way conversation and we help them network their people for them, because we have done it for longer than they have. And this doesn't have to be someone that's brand new. I mean, you could have learned about these products for a year now, and it's still beneficial to have someone be in there to help you leverage your network. Maybe it's, you want to share the business opportunity with somebody, and you feel like, well, I mean, all I've done is hit silver, and I want to have someone that's, earning $1,000 a month talk to these people. Whatever the case may be, help your team leverage their network. He gave a statistic that the average person hasn't contacted more than 10 to 20% of the people they know. I mean, that's a pretty large amount. That's 80 to 90% of your warm market, or your market that you haven't contacted. So to increase your influence with your team, to help them move to action, you just want to keep building those relationships. So that was the third strategy, and it was leveraging your existing team. And then strategy 4 was tap into the power of dormant ties. And this is actually one of the biggest strategies he said that he was sharing. And what he means by a dormant tie is somebody in your network that you've known for a long time, but you haven't engaged with in a while. So this could be somebody from college. It could be someone from high school. It could be someone from an old job, an old neighborhood you lived in, someone that you just don't communicate with on a regular basis, maybe other than you see them on your Facebook feed or something like that. But it's a great way to expand that tight circle by going back and saying, hey, we haven't talked in a long time. Like, what have you been up to? So these are what he calls dormant ties. You don't want to message them a bunch of stuff. Just send them a quick message and say, hey, we haven't connected in a while. How have you been? Wait for them to respond. Some people never get on Facebook Messenger. Some people may not check Instagram direct messages, whatever the case may be. But we're going to talk about an exercise at the end of this to really start to figure out who are these people and how do you interact with them. So that was strategy number 4, which is tap into the power of dormant ties. And then the last strategy he talks about, which I love, is random acts of generosity. So again, this goes back to that whole notion of putting out what you want to get in return. And, Kim's doing a great thing on her page right now with the random acts chart every day on the calendar. And I love it. And he's like, maybe when you're at a restaurant, you give a bigger tip. Maybe it's spending extra time with your kids, reaching out to someone in your network and just say, hey, I love your posts. They always uplift me. Just something that's going to make something else better for someone else that day. It does not have to cost money. It does not have to take a lot of time, but putting those acts of generosity out there in the world will bring positive energy back your way. And I love that he shared a quote that said, trade your expectations for appreciation and the world changes instantly. Trade your expectations for appreciation and the world changes instantly. And I just thought it was really good because I'm on the 4 color personalities, I'm a red. And so I'm very goal oriented. And when I don't hit goals or I'm getting close to not hitting a goal, I can get very stressed and very myopic, and I'm starting to focus on the things that aren't going right and what am I going to do, and I start to get really overwhelmed and I start to panic, and then I know I start to message people in the wrong way, and it just is kind of like a spiral kind of thing. And so it's really about yes, son, I'll put that quote in the comments. And then that is really, those are the things he shared. Now, none of this replaces 3 key things, I would say. You have to have no excuses. Whether you want this business to earn a couple $100s a month or just to share their products so you can get yours paid for, or you want this business because you want to retire on it, you have got to have no excuses. And I know those are easy to have, but there's a lot of research behind if you just turn it around and say, you can say I don't have time, but really you should say I'm not making it a priority. Yes, there will be days where you cannot do something with your Plexus business, but then the next day you do twice. There should not be weeks at a time, if you're really making it a priority. I mean, I think back to like when my mom was really sick in the hospital. She was in the hospital for 19 days. I definitely could not be as into my business as I was used to being. But I definitely didn't let more than a day go by where I didn't do 15 minutes of something, even if it was just following up with people already taking the products. I mean, I owe it to them as their health coach to make sure that they're doing well with the products. So no excuses. The second part is be consistent. This is a business that you can work. If they say, you can work this business part-time, but not some of the time. So again, if you can only do 5 minutes a day right now, that's 5 minutes a day. But coming in and going out, it's hard. I mean, it's going to be harder for you to grow. It's going to be harder for you to get the momentum. I've been there. I've experienced it, but I haven't done it for a long period of time. I would say that's one of the things, my business has gone up and down over these last 3 years. I've had points as high as senior gold and points as low as silver. And I credit the consistent use or the consistent effort every day at keeping myself, in a positive trajectory, even if things have slipped back. And that was because I read a book called The Slight Edge, which is an absolutely fantastic book if you haven't read it. And then the last one I would just say is be bold. You've got to be bold in this business. And bold looks different for different people. But if you are going to just make a post every day and hope that's enough, I promise you it's not. And these products we have actually have the power to change people's lives. I mean, all these testimonies, they've changed my life. And so I kind of feel like I've got almost like a duty to be able to share these with people and make things better for them. So those were the tips that he shared. Those were the strategies he shared. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording and we will continue our discussion.